What's going on, Fud Nation? Today we have a very special interview with one of my favorite crypto traders, probably the only crypto trader that I actually follow for trading advice. This particular person is a phenomenal wealth of information when it comes to trading. He's extremely realistic, and I've personally seen him make some amazing trades live. He verifies his trades, and it's a very exciting thing to see someone actually trading and having success in the market. Granted, some of those trades have been shorts, but nonetheless, I thought it would benefit the FUD TV audience to have someone who's a genuine, proven, decade long trader, not just here in cryptocurrency, but in traditional markets as well. We're so thankful to have him on the show. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Crown from Crown's Crypto Cave. I'm going to link his channel in the section below. He does live streams twice a day for 2 hours each session. That's 4 live hours of trading each and every day. And I think it's a phenomenal resource for you guys. So I'm very excited to introduce Crown from Crown's Crypto Cave. Let's get to the interview. So I just wanted to lay a little foundation for you, for my viewers who may or may not be familiar with your work. Could you talk a little bit about how long you've been trading, where you learned to trade, where you learned to do TA, a little bit about your history, sort of analyzing the charts?
Yeah, man. And apologies if I don't look you directly in the eyes right now. I'm looking at my screen at you and also looking at the camera. But hey, okay. So who am I? What am I? Why should you even listen to me? Well, my name is Crown. I've been trading for about I guess a little bit over a decade now. I really started when I was younger. My father was a trader on the floor of Pacific Stock Exchange. So every summer I'd go down there and be a clerk for him, do the good old rigmarole, fun times. It was it was quite the scene, really just seeing how everything operated. So learned a little bit that way, went off to college, did that for a good 6 years.
Mm.
and really after that point in time, I decided that sort of route wasn't for me. Even though I did get a degree in economics and business and all that good stuff, wasn't really interested in going that route. So came back to San Francisco and harassed some of my connections to to essentially teach me on the floor of New York Stock Exchange ARCA. So got around some of the best traders really in the nation. One of the guys who made some market making software essentially took me under his wing after some slick persuasion, I suppose. And yeah, man, exactly. And it really, after some time, he kind of taught me the system, taught me how to do options, which was really a lot at once. Actually, coming back to it, I wish I just learned how to trade stocks first, but trading options and stocks is just like, it's like a hundredfold really. But with all those people around me, man, everyone was super helpful. After that, after kind of spending about a year's time with him, I peeled off to another guy, and that guy was just a magician. He was a magician. He knew his technical analysis. He's when he started teaching me technical analysis. So at that point in time, I really started learning how to use technical analysis in correspondence with options as well. So that must have started like right when I got out of college. So I was 22. So that was about, I don't know, like 8 or so years now. Um, and I've been learning before from my father, but to really actually put it into motion and to actually be trading, with real money, that's where the magic did start to happen. And it was rough at first. The first year, it's it's like, oh my god, what am I even doing? Then after that, things start to click, and just every year becomes a little bit more and more consistent as the pieces start to fill in. So after a few years of that, after being a market maker in equity options on New York Stock Exchange ARCA, officially for a while, I peeled off. I found out about cryptocurrency. I was really like enamored with it. I think that Bitcoin is just a cool idea. I don't know if I can say the same about all the other cryptocurrencies, but hey, when it comes down to it, I thought it was a pretty cool idea, and it trades well. So I started to slowly peel my way into there, starting about a couple years ago, and then I went about full time, um, sometime last year. Yeah, probably around this time last year,
So,
and then now here I am.
so what are your favorite charts to look at? What are your favorite charts to trade and why?
Favorite trucks to trade and why? Man, so I'm more of a day trader, short-term trader. So I'll look at the 10-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute, hourly. For my intents and purposes, the hourly, does a lot for me. But the biggest trades, come from the higher time frames. Daily, weekly is where like the true magic happens. But it's like who who can wait for that, man?
I feel like so many of us have been waiting for that. So we've been waiting for a
Yeah.
year. We've been waiting for a year on the weekly chart.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, exactly. For people who are not familiar with me or my channel, basically, I started it about 8 months ago, and we were waiting for the one big trade, which was the break of 6,000. And really, when you're looking at a weekly, well, those trades only happen once, quite literally once or twice a year, really.
Hmm.
So,
You were talking about
yeah,
the break upward,
the break downward
the
from
break downward.
6,000.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I started streaming about 8 months ago, so we were heavy
Hmm.
into downtrend by then.
Yep, exactly. And partly because of the sage guidance of people like you, that was one of the opinions that we had been taking in, and we had been telling the FUD TV audience that we believe, based on the analysis we've been doing and the people that we've been listening to, that the 3 to 5K range has to go get tested and has to go get explored before the bottom can really get put in. Now it's sort of seeming potentially as though we've kind of ripped right through that 3 to 5K range. And
Yeah.
what are your, I
Yeah,
guess,
it's
what are your
pretty intense,
feelings
man.
before we get into your feelings about where we're going?
Yeah,
Let's talk about your favorite moments of 2018. What are the best calls that you made? What do you think are your shining moments
oh,
of
man.
2018?
Well, I think, I suppose really the big one of breaking 6,000, because I was saying that really when we were around 16,500, that's how I was feeling. But I didn't really start streaming until I think last March. So we were around like 10,000 or whatever it was. And that's when I started like saying it, publicly. So, that's probably the biggest one. But like for my own trading activities, actually probably my best trade of last year was Ripple, man. And it always feels dirty to say, because I know people really hate that one. But hey, man, it trades, and that was one of the most impressive runs I've ever seen out of any asset, man. It was absolutely incredible. This drop from 6,000 has been certainly very profitable as well, and very exciting as well. But it's a little bit more bittersweet, because I feel like a lot more people are not, when the market's going higher, everyone's kind of excited together. Now it's like you got some people who are a little bit excited, you got some people who are um, not the most enthusiastic about this. And yeah, man.
So just to clarify, so everybody knows, you trade futures, right? You trade on BitMEX, correct?
Yeah, I actually don't trade on BitMEX anymore. I trade on Dribbit. So I do trade futures, perpetual contracts, and then options mainly. So going back to my own expertise, that's where I really had a more professional background in actually trading equity options. So Bitcoin is a special place right now because it's relatively new. The market makers don't really know how to price these things. So the opportunity is just astronomical at the current moment in time. It's just unknowns to any other asset that I've seen. So yeah, man, I'm actually pretty much doing mostly options right now.
And obviously, the opportunity is a double-edged sword, right? Because the opportunity.
Oh yeah, opportunity to get wrecked as well, man. Absolutely. Trading is a game of risk reward, and I think that's the thing that most people get wrong, or at least have difficulty accepting, is that, or maybe I think in a more philosophical sense, people just don't understand what risk even is. People will go into a trade thinking that they've accepted the risk of it, but to actually follow it, man, I've just seen this so many times, not just in other people, but also in myself. When I was first starting, it's like, it starts going against you. So you start, putting away your stop loss, and doing this, doing that. You start to look for every little thing that fits your bias. But really, the best way to have been doing it was to just watch, just maybe even make like a journal before you're going into a trade, and saying, hey, this is the area, this is the reason why, and that's it, because it doesn't matter over a prolonged period of time. So, yeah, man. I don't know how I got to that, but yeah.
So I guess let's get to the juicy stuff. What exactly are you looking for right now? What people want to know is what they can expect, and obviously, to the extent
Hmm.
possible, how are experts even analyzing these charts? Because everybody knows that TA has become kind of a meme, and that it's
Hmm.
become almost a joke because of all of the essentially unreliable TA that's been put out. So
Yeah.
how do you find yourself making reliable calls? What do you consider a reliable call? If you have any charts or graphs that you want to bring up and sort of talk about how you make how you come to a point where you feel confident that you can
Mhm.
start putting in a trade. Uh, Please fill in the audience. I'm sure everyone would love to know how you gain confidence in a market like this.
Alrighty, well, let's see if I can share this window over here then. All right, cool. Yeah,
I see it.
is it in?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Okay, so when it comes down to it, when it comes to trading, you almost have to be agnostic. And you can go through, do all the analysis in the world, do, hours and hours and hours of looking at these things. But at the end of the day, you either have what you want to see in front of your face, which is enough to take a trade, or you don't, and nothing else. So really, it's a lot more simple than I think most people make it out to be. For myself, I like to trade using pretty well, maybe some people wouldn't consider this, but what I think are pretty damn simple. So I use mainly exponential moving averages, mainly simple moving averages. That's my bread and butter. That's what I spent the majority of my more professional experience learning from the guys who have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. So when I look at this over here, I see something very simple, man. I bought this red 200 simple moving average right over here because, well, it's a big support, typically bounces off of that, and that's enough for me to be confident on it. Now, when it comes down to it, what does that is that always going to hold true? No, not at all, man. But that's a part of the risk category of this guy. And if we were to close it below this area, well, that goes into the loss. But at the end of the day, we're looking for prolonged rates of statistical setups that are going to get you into the green. So not every trade is going to work out. We're just looking at mathematical formulas. That's it right here. There's no like true magic to it. Anyways, so when it comes down to me being confident enough to make a trade, I just need to see something that fits my risk reward profile. That's all, man. That's all. And just don't overthink it because so many people, man, they just overanalyze and you have that term analysis by paralysis. Well, it's damn true, man. It's damn true. So when it comes down to it, man, this is pretty much the bread and butter of what I look at. Yeah, you look at some indicators as well. I got my RSI, I got my own proprietary oscillator down around here, and then I got my Stoke over here. But at the end of the day, man, I'm just going off of price action, horizontal support and resistance as well. That's good enough for me, man. And I love that you bring up that point. I absolutely love that you bring up that point that TA has become a meme, or sometimes, as I refer to it, or meme. And what do I mean by that? Well, you have a lot of people talking about like Elliott waves now and doing this and doing that and saying
It's my wave.
Bitcoin's going to yeah yeah Bitcoin's going to this price at this date no matter what, no ands ifs or buts about it. And by the way, I'm going to tell you the next few moves as well. Well, that whole thing sounds really sexy and it looks really cool, especially to perhaps the untrained eye. But in my experience, for one, I don't know a single professional who uses Elliott waves. I don't know anyone who has millions in the banks who only uses Elliott waves over a long period of time, which is what I really set out to learn from people who had that verification. But also in the way that I look at technical analysis, you can't do that. You can't just say this is going to happen no matter what, because I've been on the other side, man. I've been a market maker. I've seen big players come into the arena and say, "Hey, I'm gonna market sell into your support like super hard and break it right in front of your face." That can happen. You have to be able to adjust. So when you get into really dogmatic views of these sorts of things, that's where it does become a meme. That's where it does become just really, really silly. I mean, and I'm not even getting to the people like perhaps some altruistic YouTubers who go parabolic all the time. I'll just put it that way. But basically, you can't just like put a curve on this guy and say, well, I've done the analysis and we will be going to about 100,000 at the end of 2020. So there's nothing else about it. When I look at this, all I see is our market cycles, actually better seen on this BLX index right over here. This goes back to the history of Bitcoin. I don't even need any indicators on this besides these exponentials and simples, really. And I can look at this and I can see, okay, well, we had a parabolic market cycle in 2017, started in 2015, actually, right over here. And now we're playing the other side of it, man. And you see this across all different assets. This is human psychology at its finest. So you'll see that I saw this in equities, I saw this in commodities, forex, and yes, magic and net money as well. So
What do
we're
you
just
think's the
dealing with
most
human.
analogous cycle outside the crypto market to what's happening here in Bitcoin, if there can be an analogy
The
drawn?
most analogous. Is my screen going? Uh-oh.
You're still
I'm
shared.
trying to lose.
You're on the Brave New
Oh, am I
Coin
sharing?
Liquid X.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. Okay, cool. I should be back. Is
Chroma
this working?
cam. There it is. Boom.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, man, when it comes down to it, sorry, what were we just at?
We're talking about
You're gonna have to
analogies to the parabolic movements, the psychology. Totally cool. Yeah, we've been running around. I know you like to use a lot of different types of charts and indicators, and when you
yeah,
do your analyses, which I find refreshing because a lot of times you'll have people sort of stuck in a small box when they're analyzing. They're not taking in the external factors around the market.
yeah, absolutely. Going back to your question, what's the most similar asset? Definitely commodities, man. Gold is a great example, not just because of the actual chart itself, which was, a parabolic run up, and then, now it's doing kind of the same thing that Bitcoin is actually,
Hmm.
but you have the same sort of cult-like mentality around it too, which, I use lovingly. It's an altruistic term because I do like cryptocurrency, man. I do think Bitcoin's a really cool idea. But you get that super die hard mentality that will, hold on, the hodl meme, right?
Hmm.
Which will hold on to the very end, right? So you get that same sort of personalities around it. People always talking about manipulation and whatnot here and there. So that would be the most similar, man. And just commodities in general, these very interesting ways of trading, man. They don't trade like equities. They trade like crazy things, really,
They go
man.
in
You can just
cycles.
see crazy moves in them, man. They go in cycles. Everything goes in cycles, but they go in these pretty intense cycles, I'd say. Yeah.
So I guess when it comes down to it, gold also had this parabolic run up. Then we got a futures introduction, and then it got tamed
Mm-hmm.
and almost into into its own death of sorts. Now obviously over the last few months to a year, there has been a slight resurgence in the attention around gold. And I think that might have something to do with global economic cycles, but at the same time, do you think there's any, we started talking a little bit about manipulation, and let's get fully into that now. Do you think that there's any indications from your end, as having analyzed markets for over a decade? Where do you see potential, manipulative factors? And do you think that what's happening with Bitcoin is potentially the product of some manipulation to the downside? And do you think that there is potential for Bitcoin to overcome those factors? Obviously, that's a bit of supposition at the end, but
Right. Okay, so I'm going to answer your question, but also I don't want people to freak out. Yes, it's manipulated. Everything you see traded is manipulated. Manipulation to most people just means that that someone with more money than them is putting their will into the market, and they don't like the direction that that's going. People weren't talking about manipulation when Bitcoin was going to 20,000, just like people weren't talking about manipulation when gold went to whatever crazy number it went to as well. That is the nature of markets. Manipulation is whenever you're putting in an order, essentially, by definition. Whenever you put in a buy or a sell, you are manipulating it. You might not be a whale compared to someone who has a bigger account than you, but you might be to someone who has a smaller account than you. So people don't really consider these sorts of things. And at the end of the day, is it manipulated? Yeah, sure it is. All markets are, man. I've seen some crazy things on the floor, on the actual floor of a regulated exchange, man. So
mhm.
you bet magic internet money as all kinds of manipulation. I mean, it doesn't take too much money to run this market,
And what are those things that you've
but
seen on the floor?
I mean, do you want me to go into
Come
story
on,
mode on
tell
that,
us.
man?
You can tell us. Who's gonna find out? It's just between us
Man,
guys.
there is so much just rampant, like, obvious insider trading going on. I mean, when you have a big broker come into the pit, and they want to sell you like 10,000, like just like 100,000 call options way out of the money for just dirt cheap. And then about an hour later, the stock just starts rallying to all goddamn hell. Or sorry, starts they wanted to buy like 10,000 call options on Facebook. I remember this one. And just a couple hours later, like, yeah, everyone fucking sold sorry, everyone sold it to them. And immediately that thing just started flying, man. That thing just started flying. So you'll see that kind of stuff in there. I don't know if you want to edit that out. But yeah, man, when it comes down to
Oh no, no, yeah,
Bitcoin,
don't
absolutely
worry.
it's When it comes down to Bitcoin, absolutely, it's manipulated, man. Every asset's manipulated, though. People have this very romantic idea that like your $1,000 coming in from tax returns makes a dent in this market. Absolutely not, man. There are people with 500 million, billion, multi-billion account sizes, and when they want to move the markets, they move the markets. So 100,000, even a few million here and there doesn't really do all that much in the grand scheme of things. So a bigger account can come in and quote unquote manipulate it, but we have to really nail down our definition of manipulation and understand that it's something that is present but not to be afraid of. It's not worth it to be afraid of something that you can't really control to begin with. And just by the nature of being in markets, you can only trade what's in front of you, right? You can only trade what's in front of you. So thinking about these sort of phantom topics, well, it's great for doing a little bit of mental masturbation, but does it really help? Are you really going to be making different decisions based upon it? Probably not. Probably not. In fact, mainly I see people use that as an excuse when a position goes against them. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, it was just a manipulation because, from a human psychological standpoint, it takes away that responsibility factor, right? And people just don't want to feel like they did something wrong. So
Hmm.
it becomes like a scapegoat to blame things on is what I'm trying to get at.
So I guess that leads me into the next sort of uh, group of questions here, which is manipulation can go both ways, and the perception of manipulation can go a lot of ways. It sounds like from what I'm hearing that what you're seeing right now is it's a market cycle. It's based on market psychology and a correction,
Hmm.
a very harsh correction from a very parabolic
Yeah.
move. There's a lot of
Yeah.
talk, and I think that the most devastating feeling, I think, for a lot of people here in the crypto community is that Tether uh, was just printed and pumped Bitcoin and that none of it was real. It's like finding out that Santa Claus doesn't exist type thing. And that
I
2017
understand
was,
that.
2017 was Santa Claus, and that actually that wasn't real. And that it was just the Tether boys printing and pumping and then dumping on the market. Uh, I've heard you talk about this, and I have a feeling you're going to say something that people actually really want to hear here. So why don't you talk a little bit about Tether and what you think the actual effect on the market has been?
Okay, so Tether is a very interesting thing, right? But at the end of the day, nothing operates in a vacuum. So again, we can only trade what's in front of us. When it comes to Tether, have I looked into their, and have I done like the analysis on their audits? No, I don't have access to that. No, I mean no one does except for I suppose themselves. So the only way that we ever find out that something's like actually truly wrong is if the SEC or whoever, whatever regulatory agency comes in and says, hey, what is this? but um
Mm-hmm.
but from my own standpoint, man, Tether, it's it's interesting when you look at the charts. There are some very strange things going on there, no doubt about that. And there's a beautiful saying by a man who I cannot recall the name of currently, but it's show me the charts and I'll tell you the news, right? Show me the charts and I'll tell you the news. So I'll actually bring up my screen right over here, and there are a few things interesting about what's going on with Tether. Let's see, close this message. Okay, cool. And we can bring up the actual Tether chart on Kraken. And over here we have it, and you'll see that typically speaking, this thing does maintain its dollar pegging for the most part. It has a few wicks here and there, but overall, everyone kind of brings it back into parity. Well, a couple months ago in early October, this thing really started to lose its dollar pegging. In fact, spending about the whole month below parity, getting all the way down to almost, I think around 85 cents. Yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
85 cents at the bottom of this guy right here, and then maintaining a comfort zone between about 95 cents and almost a dollar. Now it's back around a dollar, and I believe that we have seen. I think that there has been some sort of a new thing with Finex, essentially announcing that you can redeem tethers for dollars through
Mm-hmm.
them now, which that's a pretty big deal, man. That's a pretty
Right.
big deal. So again, when it comes to Tether and people talking about manipulation, Price action is price action, man. You can't argue what's in front of you. You know, if you start saying that essentially, last year's run wasn't real because Tether was present, well, how do you you can't trade something like that, man. It's one of those things. We can tell ourselves the stories of the market, but as a trader, you have to be agnostic to these sorts of things. You can only trade with what's in front of you. We had a parabolic run up, and that was the end of your market cycle. You can't have well, let's just go back to it right over here. I think this one's just so beautiful. You can't have 3 years of bull market without doing a little bit of this as well, man. We're
Hmm.
shaking people out. Is Bitcoin going to die or not? I don't think it dies or anything like that. But this is actually quite normal from a market perspective. So did Tether cause all this action right over here? I don't really have a strong opinion on it, man. The action is the action. You could literally buy or sell a Bitcoin right at the top of this guy, right at $19,764 and 51 cents. So you know as a trader, does it matter? Not really. Not really. So I really don't have a strong opinion on it.
Well, I'll
What I can
direct you a little more. I've heard you essentially sort of at least pose a counter argument to the Tether
Okay.
pump argument that essentially you point to many distinct pumps that were not correlated to Tether printings. I guess is sort of what I
Yeah.
was sort of hoping you would jump
Oh,
into.
okay. Gotcha, man. Yeah. So if you want to go that route, then definitely right over here. I mean, you have a parabolic market cycle in 2013. Was Tether responsible for this? I don't even know if Tether existed at that point, to be honest with you, man.
It did not.
But the same thing right over here in 2013. Two times really in 2013. I mean, maybe you consider this 2014, and then over here in 2011. Again, if you want to go that route, yeah, market cycles are market cycles, man. And that's just a part of us being irrational, exuberant, just silly, imperfect human beings, man. We are dealing with the same sort of emotional conditioning that we've been dealing with for the last ever since we became anatomically modern Homo sapiens. Which someone feel free to correct me in the comments because I'm probably gonna get this wrong. But
Yeah, I don't
hundreds
know
of
if any
thousands.
biology majors are following the channel.
Right. But hundreds of thousands of years ago, whatever it is, it goes back further than anyone can really understand. So when it comes down to it, man, we're dealing with something that is ancient. You see these sorts of things across all sorts of assets. We just talked about gold. Let's actually bring it up and look at them right now. I think it's XAU USD. I used to trade the GLD one on Arca, but this is like the actual gold over here. And yeah, I mean, when you're talking about market cycles, yeah, you had your parabolic market cycle over here, then you come down after that, and this one's probably going to come down further, man.
And what do you think about the
It's
correlation between the introduction of futures on both of those charts?
the correlation with respect to gold or Bitcoin.
If you look in 2011, there was a gold futures introduction that since that point, gold has been pretty much not on a permanent downtrend. You see it makes some life to
Mm,
the upside, but it was mooning for all intensive purposes,
right.
and from $245 an ounce up to $1,600, $1,800 an ounce, and now it's sitting in that sort of $1,200 range. Not dead by any means, not completely dissipated, but from 2002 to 2011, I mean that's a pretty amazing run there that almost resembles a Bitcoin.
Right, right. Okay, so futures, right? Everyone talks about futures being some sort of like magical tool to control markets. And you'll hear about all these sorts of people saying they introduce futures and now you can just sell it without ever owning it, so that just automatically makes things go downwards. No, 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 no. This is so wrong, man. Okay, when you have an announcement like that, a futures announcement, an announcement of an announcement of whatever announcement, a conference call, earnings, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter what it is. The reaction is typically the same. You have a rally into that event, and then the event sells off. Why? Again, it comes back to human psychology. Humans are waiting for that event. We are living in the microwave, in the microwave era, right? Where everyone just wants, everyone feels like that's going to be the reaction of it. Well, the more the professionals will look at this and they will actually buy things up, making the retail or causing the retailers to think, it is mooning, whatever, whatever word you want to use. Um, and cause that sort of FOMO, right? So I'm sure like futures got announced probably somewhere right around here. I'd imagine somewhere right around here in like late 2009, and then you just start just rallying up and rallying to the moon. You start truly going. I mean, like yes, you're parabolic all the way through, but this was just like to the moon right here,
Yep.
which I'm sure that's probably like this is probably like about a month after it debuted. Again, I don't know the exact dates, but I'll just guess that would be when it would. Similar to what you saw in Bitcoin right over here, which we can actually go back to as well, because it's going to be the same reaction, right? You have your futures announcement right here. You go extremely parabolic. I mean, these charts are actually very similar. Again, human psychology at play. People
Freakishly
buy into
similar.
it. Right. People buy into it thinking that it goes higher, but why? Where does this even come from to begin with? Do people have this perhaps romantic idea, maybe, or maybe I'm just making assumptions myself, but that it just magically goes higher because now you can trade futures on it. Like that makes zero sense. Institute, you have the same thing with backed. It's the same sort of thing. Yes, I understand that, it's you're gonna have physical Bitcoin delivered, which I don't know what that means to begin with because it's all on my computer anyways. But
It is it is
but
one of the most oxymoronic statements I've ever heard.
yeah, yeah, man, absolutely. And again, you're probably gonna have the same sort of thing. You're probably gonna have a rally leading 2 weeks up into it, and then a dump off afterwards. Why? Because we have this expectation, or the general retailer expectation will be, okay, that means we go to the moon now because now it's gonna be on a place that I've heard about on CNBC or whatever it might be, and then the professionals will dump it on them because they know that they can. They know that the buyers will be there. Remember, it's not the little guy who's causing these big moves up. Here. Even in Bitcoin, man, the profession we knew about this in 2011, man. We knew about this in 20. Once we saw this thing go from like $2 to what was it like $10 or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
Like, oh, that was like talked about, man. It was talked about.
Yep.
So when it comes down to futures, man, people talk about that like being the inevitable demise of Bitcoin. No, like how do you explain this over here then? How do you explain this over here? How do you explain, well, you don't really have one over there. But overall, man, it's just again a human psychological thing. We have expectations of an event. The expectations are, I mean, they're essentially met. Futures debut. Like world hunger is not solved. World peace is not solved. Cancer is not cured. AIDS isn't cured. All these sorts of things, and life just goes on. And people say, okay, what now? What now? Does that really change anything? Does futures or a backed or an ETF force people in the world to buy Bitcoin with all their free monies? No. Yes, it certainly does make it a little bit easier for some people to invest in it. No doubt about that. No doubt about that at all. But hey, here's the thing. People who want to be in Bitcoin are pretty much in Bitcoin right now. People who wanted to be in gold were pretty much in gold. So you're just seeing the end of a parabolic market cycle, and you'll probably get one again at some point. When it goes back going back to gold over here, but it's going to take a long time for it to sort itself out. It probably has some more downside, although it could really change if we could actually start getting back above 1269. It's going to start to change my mind on that. But at the current moment in time, it does look like it wants to come a little bit lower to me. So you do have regular markets that are looking like they want to sell off as well. So maybe that does force this thing up, as this has been the the what is it, the fear,
Hmm.
or the whatever it is. People use it as a hedge, right, against regular markets. Well, that didn't work out so well in 2008, now did it? Because I mean, like, you have this over here, 35% down. So people will, this is, it all comes back to the same thing. People tell stories about things,
But then, I
and the
mean,
stories.
if you're looking, you get the quantitative easing kicks in from 2008. You start printing
Mm,
trillions of dollars, and then we get a parabolic run upward.
true. Yeah, true, man. It doesn't operate in a vacuum now, does it? So, same thing with gold though. Gold was rallying, with the whole stock market as well. Stock market's been essentially straight up the last however many years now. We can even go over to it right now, which this one does look like it wants to come down now. But this was 2008 right over here. I mean, it's been up for the last literally 10 years. So
Hmm.
yeah, man.
So, how do you think these traditional markets, especially as we're seeing, more and more fears, we're seeing more and more confirmation of a bear trend starting to emerge
Mhm.
in traditional equities markets? What do you feel the correlations, if any, are between traditional markets and the emerging sort of Bitcoin cryptocurrency market?
Yeah, so this one's a really interesting thing, man. I'm glad that you brought it up. And this is where it comes back to what I like. I used to actually trade the spies over here. So this is one of the major indexes of the traditional US equities market. And we have seen that it is essentially correlated with Bitcoin on the big moves. And when I say that, I can bring up a chart. Well, let's actually overlay it. Let's do the compare symbol over here, and we'll put on FinX. It's the easiest one right there. And there we go. And you'll see for the past year or so, it's been correlated on the big spikes up and the big spikes down. You made your highs together, you made your lows together in the beginning of 2018,
Well,
and well, Bitcoin didn't necessarily make another high in September, but it did make lows with it as well. So
well, if there
Bitcoin
were
getting kind of with the
corporate buyback programs on Bitcoin, we might have seen it.
yeah, yeah, just need some earnings, man. That's all. But
Yeah, some earnings
but
reports, some jobs reports.
yeah, man. So what does this tell us? Well, what we can gather from this is that they're both essentially considered risk on assets. And what I do know from people that actually know in this market, there are a lot of the same people moving money around in traditional markets as there are in Bitcoin. One of my friends' firms in Chicago manages a ton of money. I probably shouldn't say like the exact amount, but a rather large firm, I should say. And they, they actually won't share this with me, but they have found through their market making behaviors that there is a significant correlation between what you see in traditional markets and what you see in Bitcoin. The spreads are extremely similar dependent upon what sort of action you have in the day. So they're coming at it from a little bit of a different angle, and I thought that was quite interesting. So you do have the same people essentially moving money around, and this is considered by the I suppose the market movers, if you want to make that distinction, um, a risk on asset. Both of them are for now. Whereas gold is your traditional risk off, I suppose, or what's the word that people use for it? Not really familiar with it. Do you know what I'm
Oh, like an
referencing?
like a independent currency or whatever they call it, or something that's like,
Nah, just like a risk haven or whatever it might be, man.
oh,
I
yeah,
think
just
I
I
think
mean,
you're
generally people hedge with it. I'm actually not as
right.
well versed in the traditional those maybe
Gotcha.
the stock market jargon. I have not been on as
Yeah,
many floors as
just
you
like a
have.
head. Yeah, there's some sort of like cute word that they have for it, but yeah.
Oh yeah, the bankers are
So
the cutest.
yeah. Yeah, man. So, we see a strong correlation between these two. And this is quite worrying right now because I actually have become I have been bearish on the stock market ever since this area right over here. Now, this is a topping formation if we take off Bitcoin and just look at this, as it is. So, you have to be wondering yourself when this thing can very easily come down all the way to our purple 200 exponential right over here, right around about 240, which is a significant drop for traditional markets. Remember, like a 2 to 3% move in traditional markets is like groundbreaking. For Bitcoin, that's like a normal Monday,
Yep.
But you have to be wondering for yourself. You have to be wondering what happens if we do break this major support right here. Now, I do have the whole, everything kind of marked off right over here. And if we do start smashing through this 263 level, well, yes, I do have some supports below, but it will start to really confirm the overall the overall bear trend getting started. This does look like a bull trap to me right over here. Increasing volume on the sign right over here, and overall, when you go for about 10 years straight, well, you're probably going to play out a little bit of downside. Monthly is quite bearish as well. I mean, just looking at the chart as it is, I use, and just as a little bit of an aside, this yellow line right over here, that's the 21 exponential moving average, and this is the monthly time frame. And I use that as a general litmus test for either bullish or bearish over the long term. Well, we're starting to base upon it once again, and the second that we actually break this and open and close some candles below it, well, that's where things do get a little bit more long term, prolonged downside, we'll call it that. So what does that mean for Bitcoin? Well, if this thing has plenty of room to move to the downside, which again, like we said, this thing can move, I would say it was certainly not a question to move about 20% down over here to about 215, 220-ish area to this into this block, which I've marked off right over here. Not too well though. Um, Also your 100 exponential on the monthly, which I do like. What does that mean for Bitcoin? Well, we go back into it over here, and when you hear people talk about going into the 1000s, it's certainly not out of question. And from a technical analysis standpoint, it's kind of like an unspoken rule that the highs of your prior market cycle become the lows of your next market cycle. So that would mean right over here at around 1100, 1200 area. Again, am I saying Bitcoin definitely goes around there? No, I'm not saying that, but it's not out of the question. And from a technical analysis standpoint, we could come all the way back over here for Bitcoin and it would still be, relatively, and I know this sounds crazy, but relatively okay. Like it wouldn't present any sort of major issues from a technical analysis standpoint. Now, if you did start closing monthlies below this high right over here, then that would actually imply from a technical analysis standpoint that this asset is there's something severely wrong with it. Whoever was supporting it before is not there and not like not paying attention. Maybe they're out for a coffee, whatever it might be. It would not be good. And you kind of had the same thing right over here in 2013. You didn't close a monthly below, but you did kind of test this area. And same thing in if we go back to our BLX index, we had the same thing in 2011 as well, where actually just the kind of wick to wick almost, but you don't have to come all the way back to your prior high of your prior market cycle. In fact, this one was quite far away. Even if you do use wick to wick, I think it was still about 100% move. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, about 100% move. So over here, I'm just saying that it can come over here, and it would make sense from a technical analysis standpoint. It's not my first, target or anything like that. Again, if you want to go through that sort of thing, we can go over here to my Bitstamp chart, and I do have it already marked off. I'm really looking at this next blue box territory for a potential bottoming zone. That's where I do become interested once again. This area over here doesn't, just looks like a little bit of a reactionary bounce to me. Nothing too crazy. But once we get into here, or once we get into here, those are the two areas where I become extremely interested in perhaps looking for an actual reversal on this asset, as the reaction on this first blue box was just very piss poor.
So that blue box, just to spell it out, is in the sort of upper 2000s. The
Yes.
20
Okay. So this guy, yeah. So all right. So it's right here between about 2400 and about 2900, we could say. So it's quite large actually. But that's
and that
that's the
bottom blue
nature of the
box is
beast when you're dealing with
that
large
bottom blue
numbers.
box is sitting around
Yeah.
11 to 1350.
Yeah, about 11 to 1300. Yeah, exactly, man. So, somewhere in these ranges is where it makes sense. The volume profile makes it very, makes it pretty damn clear over here. It says, hey, we're kind of out of no man's land right now. So while you might bounce around in this area, maybe even go back into like the mid 4000s, it's certainly out of the question from here. But overall, it does look like it wants to float towards this area of high volume, this higher volume node right over here. Again, it's one of those things that assets typically tend to float towards, liquidity. So
Yep.
that's what we'd be looking at over here.
So as far as what actually moves the market, a lot of people are sort of under the impression that when they go and buy Bitcoin and that all their friends go and
Mhm.
buy Bitcoin, that's what's moving the market. Um, yeah, and then obviously you laugh because there's so many bigger fish swimming in the sea.
Yeah.
What's a minnow to a whale? But at the same
Right.
time, you know, uh, buying and I think for the average person watching FUD TV, they will
Mhm.
have bought Bitcoin a finite number of times, even if they're doing weekly buys. They can go
Right.
back and calculate with fairly easily how many trades they've done, probably using, one or both hands, if not more, of significant buys, even $1,000 buys or more. I'm sure most the audience has only done so many of those. A lot of people kind of buy in at one point or another point. How does that affect the price of Bitcoin, if at all?
So, I mean, well, anytime you have buying, it's gonna put upwards pressure on it. But as you said, when it comes down to it, man, unless you're playing around with hundreds of millions of dollars, it's not going to be enough. There are big players who who will impose their will on this, and for the average person putting in a few dollars here, a few dollars there, it's not really going to be moving the market when it
So
comes
I
down
guess the
to it. So
myth, would you say that it's a kind of a bit of a myth that retail investors move the market? Retail investors obviously built the market, but they don't move the market. Essentially, is what you're saying.
yeah, yeah. So retail investors, They're an interesting part of the market, right? Because they're obviously needed, but they don't really, they kind of just provide a little bit of liquidity. Whoops, there we go. There's my, okay, great.
He's
We
back.
got that back going. Okay, awesome. There we go. Cool. Okay, so yes, people get this idea that retailers get, move the markets. This is where you get those ideas where it's like, we have Chinese New Year's coming up and tax returns, and oh, guys, just a dip because it's Labor Day and hot dogs are really expensive this year. So stuff like that, man. And it perpetuates that sort of a myth. Does it matter? No, not really. The people who move the markets have significantly more money. And I don't mean to say this to be arrogant or belittle anyone. It's just this is just a fact of the market. And like I said, I've been on the other side, and you will see the market movers. I saw the market movers in the pits. We would do business with them, and when they're doing hundreds of thousands of contracts in options, which is it's just the dollar amount is it's uncomprehendable, really. At least sometimes for me. So you really realize, okay, a few bitcoins here, a few bitcoins there, not going to really move the marks or anything like that. Even a few $1 million, not going to do too much.
So as far as what obviously as retail investors become more and more skittish, less confident in the market, and we know that the retail herd has died significantly. We can see that on social media, Google Trends. We can see that in the market and the volume. What do you obviously at that point I sort of am under the impression, which I believe that you'd probably support, which is that the technical analysis and the sort of traditional bot trading and big market sort of movements are even more obvious and more reliable because those are the only people really moving at this point, and there's not the same swells as those retail swells that sort of maybe happened around Thanksgiving last year when Bitcoin erupted and became everyone's dinner table conversation. But at least for now, in this kind of depressed, bearish market cycle, which could go much lower. Obviously, I know you're doing a lot of futures and options. What are you looking to do in 2019? What's your strategy coming into this next year? And I know that you're taking it on a day by day basis, but what do you think for potential traders out there, or just potential retail investors? What do you think is your energy coming into 2019, and what are you going to be looking for?
Yeah, so from a longer term perspective on 2019, I'm always open to seeing a bottom in Bitcoin. Of course, like I said, I do believe in it longer term, but that also means longer term. Will we get a bottom in 2019? Probably. And likely it'll be in one of those blue boxes that we outlined over there. And that's what I'll essentially be looking for. Right now, though, I have very little of my actual trading capital in the market. I don't think it's the time to really be doing that. The part that I do have in it, yeah, I do trade and everything like that, but this is not the time to be. This is not an investor's market right now. I know people always talk about hashtag DCA, hashtag HODL, all these great acronyms, which work for a very select few amount of people, which we could get into as well. But it's in my opinion, it's very likely that things go lower. So I'm not really in a rush to be buying Bitcoin. I'm not really in a rush to be doing anything right now. From a longer term standpoint, I really want to see how this plays out. I think it's extremely important to keep up with the traditional markets, because if those really do start to get hammered, that we just don't know how that's going to react with Bitcoin. We haven't really seen anything, we haven't really seen a terrible traditional market aligned with Bitcoin yet. Because the last one was in 2008. Bitcoin was made in response to 2008, right? So we just don't know how it will behave like. I know that some crypto people think that that's going to be like when crypto really starts taking off, because people are just going to magically put their money into Bitcoin after that, which maybe it does happen, maybe it does, but I need to see proof first. So I'm the type of person who will sit back as a trader, and I suppose you could say as an investor, although I would never consider myself that. But I'm completely cool with waiting for Bitcoin to tell me that it's gone through its course, it's ready to do it. So if I see something that is analogous to capitulate, like a very obvious capitulation, a very obvious capitulation phase, or if it takes out 6,000, if it were to actually go back above 6,000, I will gladly just put back the what portion I would be investing into the market. And
So you think
I
6,000
know a
would
lot
be
of people.
indicative of a reversal?
Yeah, if Bitcoin can get back above 6,000, that's where I start saying I believe it's not going any lower. That's exactly what I'd be saying. Yeah.
Okay, so you think that this is the test of the no man's land, and that if we are, because I had sort of felt that 10,000 or 11,000 was really when we could start saying that this thing's back on track, because we were never able to get through that $10,000
Mhm.
ceiling. But at this point, you're saying that
That's
there's
a
been
very good.
enough downtrend that a move even to 6,000 would be enough for you.
So that's a very good point, what you just brought up there, and I'm gonna go back to screen share over here. Let's
Yeah,
see,
no, that's great.
because my camera's not working too hot right now either way. Alrighty, there we go. Okay, cool. So over here, it's no secret that we broke down from 6,000 right over here. So that again, traditionally, is just going to be an extremely strong resistance going up ahead. So if Bitcoin were to get back above that area, it would imply to me that we're likely, getting back above the breakdown point is either a phenomenal trap or more likely that is the actual reversal. 10,000 is an incredibly important number as well. I think you're 100% on track with that. It was more important when Bitcoin was above 6,000, but that would be the area where Bitcoin becomes a little bit more, a little bit more, what's the
Parabolic.
word I want to use? Yeah, a little bit more bullish, so to speak. So once it's down around here, I'm in no rush to get into Bitcoin. If Bitcoin actually does go through a full-on capitulation phase, which is likely, it's going to take a long time, man.
Hmm.
If you do get capitulation, I'm not even looking to buy that. I'm looking for it to go through a little bit of accumulation phase, maybe nibble a little bit here and there. But really, I want to see this level taken out. I want it to prove itself because, again, we just, you never know. You never know. So, of course, you never want to let your whole load go in one blow. So, maybe a little bit when I feel like it's an accumulation, maybe a little bit when it breaks up over there, maybe a little bit when it breaks to 10,000, or maybe even 8,000 is actually going to be a pretty damn big area as well, coming right over here. But all these prior highs are likely to be a big resistance going forwards. But the biggest one, in my opinion, yes, will be 6,000. That's really what I'm looking for. And unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to be getting above there anytime soon. Um, this is a very nasty drop off over here.
So, as far as your trading strategy, just to give a few
Mhm.
tips to the audience here, do I know that I have been watching your live streams on days where you've made exceptional trades with Bitcoin. Do you then cash that Bitcoin right out? Is that your sort of strategy for money? For essentially handling your trading strategy, do you just accumulate your Bitcoin? Are you sort of just doing it on a daily trading basis and then taking it home and slapping it on the table?
That physical bitcoins, man.
Yeah,
Um,
throw those Bitcoin on the table. It's throw those heavy bags on the table.
it must feel so good to hold in your pocket,
Yeah,
a
I mean
full
it's
ledger.
very hard to hold
Um,
all of them.
yeah. So, the money that I have in the market right now, I want to keep in Bitcoin. Yes, I do hedge it by essentially simulating a cash position on an exchange like Deribit, by essentially going into a short position against my account number. I don't know if you want to get into specifics of that, but yeah, I
So
will kind of do
you
that.
don't cash out into you don't actually buy fiat.
Oh
You
yeah, yeah. I'm not going back through into the U.S. dollar if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you
As
just
a,
put it into a hedge position just in case you have a huge drop.
exactly,
So you're
exactly. And like I
essentially
said, man,
accumulating always.
right, right, exactly. Like I said, I do believe in Bitcoin long term. So the money that I have in the market right now, I would like to just accumulate more Bitcoin. Yes, there's certainly a risk with that right now, no doubt about that. I mean, even if you hedge your own short position, or sorry, even if you hedge your own Bitcoin position with a short, I mean, theoretically it could go to zero. I don't. It's probably not going to happen, but then it'd be then your short's going to be worthless, right?
Yep.
Um, so yeah, man. So the money that I have in the market right now is calculated for that sort of effect. I'm not. I took most of it out after 16,500, and then the rest of it out after I think it was 8,000 or whatever number it might have been. Um, so again, you as a trader, you have to plan for these sorts of things. It's
And when you say
they
take it out, you're
all
talking about the hedge position.
when I say take it out, I actually took money back to the bank.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
Yeah,
so you did have a few noteworthy sells. You sold not quite the peak, but selling at 16K. I'm sure a lot of people
yeah,
would have loved to have put
yeah,
that move in.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. As a trader, I'm not concerned about catching the ultimate bottom or the ultimate top. Once we got this run over here at 16,500, once that got rejected, that was your clear signal. Get out because this thing is getting ready to go. Yes, this guy over here is pretty damn nasty going from 20,000 to 10,000, but the reaction after that was okay. It wasn't until this action right over here where I said, okay, the trend is changing now. It's time to be a little bit more in protection mode rather than more than anything.
Yep.
Um, you know,
So I guess let's see. My sort of wrap up questions here are who do you think you should be a little bit, I guess, wary of? Who have you seen any people that are popular here on the in the crypto world that you think we should be listening to or not listening to? And do you have
oh,
any
now you're just baiting it.
strong feelings about and just so not everyone here has to believe in TA. It has proven time and time again that it's not necessarily or there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily reliable in the TA that they give out. And that obviously leads to people not using it or listening to it at all. And I think that just like the extremes are things to be avoided. It's always important to be aware when you're disregarding something completely. Who do you think contributes to the worst reputations for TA, and who do you actually not mind listening to if there is anyone that you follow? Let's get
so
spicy.
I
Let's get dramatic here. Let's spill the tea.
all right. So here's what I can say as like a general guideline. The people who don't verify themselves, the people who do not show their actual trades, that is always a red flag. One thing that I go out of my way on my own channel to do is to show my trades. So I used to have like a live scalping playlist. Now I just show my actual trades from a streamer account. I have a dedicated account to my streaming activities, so I trade off there in accordance with, sorry, alongside my own main account. And that is one big thing. There's no real reason not to. I mean, and if people are really talking about this ad nauseum, you want to see some sort of a verification. It's not like traditional markets where I had to go through tests to become a market maker. So, I have verification. You go look me up on FINRA. I mean, people have done it before. It was a little bit weird at first, to be honest. But yeah, worked at Cutler Group, which is just a prop shop, all that good stuff. And I have my Series 56. But in crypto land, there's nothing like that. So the only way that you can verify yourself is with actual, results, and best done live. So if people aren't doing that, that's typically a pretty big red flag. You have some younger folk who, age is just a number, but but it's very interesting to me when someone like
Say it.
you just want me to say names like
Drop a
Data
name.
Dash,
Drop a
comes
name.
out and start. You
Drop
got
names
someone
on
like
it.
Data Dash who has
What was
150,000
that? Data
followers.
Dash?
Someone
Did
like
you say Data
Superman.
Dash?
Yeah, you got Data Dash, you got Superman. Hundreds of thousands of subscribers, maybe even more, and they are quite literally giving like. They are quite literally saying some very interesting stuff without any sort of verification of their own history, their own skills, and they say all sorts of outrageous stuff, and these are just the ones that really come to my mind because I don't really spend too much time watching it. Really my only contact with it is from people who forward me videos of just out really really interesting stuff, really interesting content. So
Just give us just a little more,
you know
just something one, just a little more to bite the teeth into. What about Supo? Obviously, I think Supo's. Here's the thing: Supo's got the bad reputation. Everyone knows that he's taking money
yeah,
from ICOs. Everyone knows that he's been
right.
selling courses since 2015. I don't think it's going to be a shock to anyone that
Mhm.
Supo may be handing out some, half baked advice or fully,
Yeah, yeah.
maliciously taking money and saying things that have been paid for. I don't think that's the
Yeah.
reputation for Data Dash, and it doesn't sound like you're implying anything like that for Data Dash, but you're just saying his background on TA does it not ring true to you?
Yeah, so when you have guys pull out, one of the big red flags also for me is like I said, Elliott waves. I just don't know any professional who's ever used that over a long period of time. You can't say something's going here, here, and here, and plot out like 5 moves in advance. It just I've seen the other side. I've seen the other side where people will just smash through that level. They'll say, "Oh, you have a support right here. How about I just how about I just throw down my sells?" And vice versa for the buys. And you can get into, I think there's this guy I've seen most recently, Eric Cho. You have Haejin Lee, Phil Ocone. His like his outlooks are pretty bad, but his trading is good. I like him as a trader. I think he's skilled as a trader. He shows his trades on screen, so I think that's very respectable. Maybe not my first choice for a beer, but but he's not bad.
Yeah, fair enough.
You have a lot of, you got shark guys who never really they don't really say anything wrong, but typically the gist of their videos, the bulls would like higher highs and the bears would like lower lows. Well, that's 100% right, but it's not, I mean, it's right. It's right. So you can't really get on their case about it. I'm sure if we went through some names, things would pop up.
So you're saying
Oh
essentially,
man,
if they're not showing their trades, they're not really a verifiable trader.
that's the only way to do it in cryptocurrency land right now. It's the wild west. There's only one way to do it, and that's with like actual proof. And that's might also just be my disposition as well, because when I was first learning trading, as a market maker in equity options, I wanted to learn from the source, man. So I would go to guys who had, I scouted out the floor, man, found the guy who had the most experience and just did whatever it took to get around him. And to have that sort of verification made me feel like I was like actually getting a real education. And when you go after someone who just doesn't have any sort of verification other than the number on his subscriber count, that's a scary proposition, because one, I mean, you can buy subscribers. I'm not saying that they are, but it's you just don't know. And two, it's like, what is your authority here? What is, I mean, anyone can give your opinion, right? Anyone can give your opinion, but we have this weird sort of social proof mechanism in our primordial brains that say, okay, this person has 100,000 followers, they must be good, I'll listen. And I've had there's a lot of people who've reached out to me with some pretty nasty stories of getting involved with some of these people. I know people have to have their personal responsibility, absolutely, but when you're saying things on the internet, you kind of know where that's going to go, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that. It sounds like, and obviously to bookend this, not throwing Data Dash completely under the bus. He doesn't do exclusively TA. He does a lot of other informative videos as well. And I do believe that his subscriber count is real. But I guess when it comes to TA specifically in trading, you're saying, show me the trades. That's how we know if you're the real one.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're only as good as your last trade. That's one of the sayings that you got to go by, man. You're only as good as your last trade.
Well, that just about wraps it up on my end. We've gone about an hour here. I think it's been a great, absolutely phenomenal talk. I'll definitely going to make sure that everyone knows how to find your channel and get a hold of your live streams, which you do twice a day, 4 hours about each day, right?
Indeed. Yeah, man.
So if you're ever wondering what's really happening in crypto at the moment, you just head over to Crown's Crypto Cave. Is there anything, closing thoughts, final words of wisdom you want to bestow upon the FUD TV audience? Go ahead. The mic is yours. Last word.
Man, Elliot, I just want to say thank you for having me here, man. I've checked out your channel before. It is one of the few wealths of information that I can actually say this place does it right. You go through your actual due diligence, you put out valuable information, and you really set yourself apart doing that, man. And I think that you just have a really great channel going on here. So I wanted to say that. I also want to say massive thank you and appreciation for having me on here, man. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. This went by so fast. So yeah, man, again, just massive thank you and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much as well. It's been amazing. We're going to end it here. And yeah, I hope to see you soon. Well, maybe as we have more movement in the market, I'll bring you on in a couple of weeks or a month or so, and we'll have a little update.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks a lot,
Very
man.
cool,
Have a
man.
great night. Take care of yourself. And once again, it's been awesome.
You as well. And good night to everyone.
Later, Crown. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Obviously, there's some mixed news. It's a fairly stark image that we're painting of where Bitcoin is versus where it's going. I know that not all of it is positive news, but I have to say, delivering to you my honest opinion and, I guess just realistic journalism here on the space, I think that's what we need here, is to understand really where things are going. Obviously, in 10, 20 years, Bitcoin could be at the moon. And that's what we're all hoping for. But it's important that we understand what short-term or medium-term movements for the asset might look like. And I hope this was a bit illuminating for you guys. Let me know what you enjoyed about this interview. And of course, throw me a like if you enjoyed it. I'm Elio Trades. You're watching FUD TV, and I'll see you very, very soon on the next episode.